Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is unveiling an updated version of his universal health care bill known as Medicare for All. It is a plan endorsed by 4 of Sanders' opponents in the 2020 Democratic primary. He appeared alongside one of them, New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, to announce the updated bill in Washington today. For Sanders, it's a much different spot compared to where he was 4 years ago when he lost the Democratic nomination to Hillary Clinton. Now he is the highest performing candidate in most national polls, trailing only Joe Biden, who isn't officially running at the time. Sanders sat down with our Ed O'Keefe yesterday, and he talked about what it's like to be in front of the pack.
You comfortable being on top?
Look, I am where I am. Would I rather be on top than down below? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, again, but I don't take it all that seriously. It's a long, long campaign, and I think there are going to be different people on top and different people on below. And what happens is on Election Day, not today. But I'll tell you what I am proud of, and I sincerely am. And I don't credit myself for doing this alone. A lot of people were involved in the struggle. During the 2015-2016 campaign, we took ideas, as you suggest, to the American people that were considered to be pretty far out there, right? Pretty radical ideas. Well, it turns out that once you explain those ideas to the American people, it turns out it's not so radical after all. People say, yeah. Let me give you just one example. 4 years ago when I ran for president, we talked about raising the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. 4 years ago, Ed, you'll acknowledge, that was a pretty radical idea, right? Well, since then, 6 states have now passed $15 an hour minimum wage legislation. And I suspect the House will pass that bill probably in the next month or two. Why is that? Because the American people know that if you work 50, 60 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. The same thing for making public colleges and universities tuition free. Radical idea a few years ago, not so radical today. And certainly Medicare for all. That idea that health care is a human right, not a privilege, has come a long, long way.
So in some ways you lost that campaign, but you may have won the argument.
Well, you could say that, yeah.
And CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is with us now from Capitol Hill. Ed, congratulations. Great interview with the senator there. How helpful is it to Sanders in this primary race to have a batch of other top-level candidates supporting one of his campaign's central ideas?
Well, I think more than anything, it sort of protects him against any potential criticism of his plan among fellow Democrats, and also to sort of a broader pool of voters who might wonder whether or not this is something that should be implemented. He can say, look, a broad cross-section of Democrats support me in an idea that they once dismissed as too radical. The four of the other senators who are running support this. Hundreds of members of the House Democratic caucus are also on board. There are those who are running for president who resist this idea. John Delaney, the former congressman from Maryland, chief among them. Also Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, who says, in theory, universal health care is a great idea, but she would rather work within the current system, bolster the Affordable Care Act, and keep working towards a gradual universal health care system. Also notably, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi last week in an interview said she's agnostic on the idea of Medicare for all and would rather see Democrats focus on protecting, bolstering, building out, tweaking the Affordable Care Act and not abandoning it as Sanders' plan would.
All right, so let's dive into the details a little bit, because as you know, they say the devil is in the details. What is different about this new Medicare for All bill compared to the old one?
Not too much different, other than the fact that it's now perhaps being more prominently discussed. And remember, this is a plan that would put virtually all Americans into the same government-backed program, whether you're 25, 35, 55, 75, everybody would be in the same system. Most of your medical care would be covered, including your dental and your vision coverage. I asked him at one point, well, what does that mean for your private insurance company, especially if you like the plan that you're in right now? And he said, well, basically they would be reduced to doing things like cosmetic surgery. If you needed a nose job or get your ears tucked or whatever, they could pay for that, but basically everything else would be covered by this government-run plan. How much would it cost? How would he pay for it? How would he propose paying for it? Didn't get into the specifics of that, and has said in the past that essentially it requires taxing wealthier individuals. But there are some estimates that say it could cost anywhere between $25 and $32 trillion over the next decade. His response to that is, well, the current system costs about $3 trillion a year. So potentially this would help drive down costs.
Right. So that's a pretty good response. So, but in response to the new plan, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders tweeted, quote, Democrats just announced their government takeover of health care, which confiscates every American's private health insurance. Stand with President Trump so America will never be a socialist country. So, Ed, is this a line of attack that dates back to President Obama saying if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, way back before the Affordable Care Act passed? And how does Sanders respond to that line of criticism?
Well, in one or two different ways, I asked him whether or not he thought this was socialism or a socialist idea. And he said, no, it's essentially what the United Kingdom and Canada and some other European countries do that aren't socialist countries. And so his argument simply is, no, it's a government-backed plan that would put everybody on the same playing field. He sees the arguments that Republicans are making that this is socialism, and while he is a self-defined Democratic, lowercase d, Democratic socialist, he didn't necessarily see it that way. Also a little misleading for the White House to say that all Democrats support this plan. While there are at least 5 presidential candidates who support this idea, first introduced by Senator Sanders, again, remember what I said. There are moderates in the party, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi herself, who are skeptical of this idea and do not wholeheartedly support it.
All right, Ed, Senator Elizabeth Warren released her tax returns today. It shows that she earned nearly $1 million in 2018. Sanders told you that he will release 10 years of returns Monday. The Times reports that he's earned enough to be considered a millionaire. So how does that network compare to other candidates? And is the campaign concerned about that image of Sanders as a millionaire?
Well, and that's what I asked him yesterday. I said, when are your tax returns coming? He said, by April 15th. And he acknowledged that because he's written some books in recent years, that he's better off than he was before. He went farther with the New York Times in saying that, yes, he actually is a millionaire. He didn't say that to us, probably because he was concerned about admitting that on camera. But essentially said that, yes, because of that work, he is now considered a seven-figure American, if you will.
Right.
That's going to be an interesting thing for him to be, given that he has spent much of the last decade, especially, railing against millionaires and billionaires in this country, who, in his words, are essentially stealing from the poor to enrich themselves. But, you know, his argument is this was a book written in recent years. Otherwise, he's only had a congressional salary. His wife has a university salary. She was a former university president. But other than that, there won't be anything terribly dramatic. He joked at one point, no, I don't have any Iranian or Saudi Arabian investments that you'll find in my tax returns, but they're coming. This has been a sort of subplot among the 2020 contenders because some of these candidates have been very good through the years about releasing their tax returns every year so that their constituents or the press can take a look at them. People like Kirsten Gillibrand and last summer Elizabeth Warren posted about a decade's worth of her returns. Sanders has resisted this since he was a candidate back in 2016 and since February has saying that they would be coming soon. So just in the last 2 weeks, there's been even more questions about, well, what is he trying to hide? And what he admitted to me is, no, there's nothing to hide. It's just that we'll release them essentially probably on tax day, if not before, and you'll see a decade's worth of his returns. Does this ultimately make a difference? You could argue it doesn't, because we have a president, of course, who never released his tax returns, and he still won the presidency.
This is America. We've never hated millionaires in this country, but you never know. All right, Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much for your insight. Thank you.